Welcome to the VW Golf R and the MG4 XPower, and today we've got a very simple twin test because on the one hand we have a 21st century hot hatch icon in the Golf R. It's fun, it's fast, it's comfortable, it's practical, but it's also petrol, and that means that its days are numbered. However, the MG4 XPower is all electric. It's the future, or so we're always being told. The question is, what about the here and now? Can an EV really make a better hot hatch than a petrol car? Let's find out. We'll start by setting a benchmark with the Golf R, chiefly because this is one of Britain's most popular hot hatches, and for very good reason. The Golf R starts from around £44,000, but this particular car has a number of options fitted, including the dynamic chassis control, R Performance Pack and a Krapovich exhaust, so it comes in at just under £53,000. Yikes. It is expensive, but people still buy these things, and I can see why. It is effortlessly fast and also still very good fun. I mean, it's not as fun as a Civic Type R or Hyundai i30N, but it's still a laugh, you know? It allows you to get the most out of it in everyday driving, whether it's dry or pouring with rain, you can always rely on a Golf R. Out in the real world, this thing is seriously quick. The power figure seems to keep changing depending on which model year you've got, but this one has 316 brake horsepower and 310 pounds-foot of torque, and if you're into your remapping, it can be an awful lot more than that. I drove one last year that had over 400 brake horsepower from just a stage 1 remap. It's amazing how much they can get out of these engines. And then because you've got an all-wheel drive system that doesn't waste an ounce of power and a 7-speed DSG gearbox, which is as snappy and efficient and slick as ever, 0 to 62 miles an hour is around 4.5 seconds. Some people say it's quicker, and it does feel it. This is a rapid car when you're out in the real world and the conditions aren't ideal. It's just so effective at putting down that power. It's also a really nice, smooth power delivery. It's not too linear. It's actually got a nice rush to the red line, so it's quite exciting as well. But it did used to sound better, this engine. I mean, this car has the optional Krapovich exhaust system, but even then, it doesn't sound all that great. It's a shame. All of this means that you can enjoy the Golf R's performance just about anywhere. Whether it's a roundabout, a B road or a motorway slip road, it always offers up an instant hit of speed that's delivered seamlessly every time. Although, again, if you want to send it into a corner with lots of speed on, it does rotate, it does move underneath you and on the brakes. And also, then if you get back on the power coming through the corner, that torque shuffling at the rear axle, it'll send up to 50% of the car's total power to just one wheel, so it tucks its line in. And that's quite crucial, especially compared with the MG, which we'll find out in a moment. It's just brutally effective absolutely everywhere, and I think that sometimes this car suffers because of that, because of how capable it really is. I mean, yes, I could do with a bit more steering feel, a bit more brake feel, a bit more feel in general actually, but this car crucially always feels like it's on your side. And that means that you can really use its capability and you can feel confident driving it, and that counts for a lot. It ain't no Civic Type R, but if I had to get from point to point as quickly and safely as possible on the public road with people and things on board, then the Golf R would be right at the top of my list. What's more, when you do want to just get home from a long day, the Golf R is, well, Golf. The gearbox is smooth, the ride, even without the optional DCC, is also very compliant, the refinement is impressive and the seats are comfy. Its ability to switch between savage pace and serene comfort is one of its biggest assets. And while its rear passenger room and seats up boot space is a little smaller than the MG's, if you fold all the seats down, the Golf R is almost 70 litres bigger. Overall, it's got a great spread of abilities. yet it's not perfect.
Now, I don't want to jump on a bandwagon, but I'm going to, because the interior of the Mark 8 Golf has definitely gone downhill from the Mark 7 and the 7.5 versions. It's very comfortable in here, like these seats, and there's lots of tech, but the control methods and the quality just isn't what it was. There's a lot of plastic dotted around and lots of plain surfaces, and then these touch buttons on the wheel, they look actually quite smart, but you'll find that they're not as easy to use as what we had before. And also, when you're driving along, if you've got slightly larger hands, then you'll see that that bit touches the heated steering wheel button. So I keep switching that on, and I know I'm not the only person that has that issue. The touch screen, where most of the controls are hidden within, is all right. It's not bad. It's fairly responsive. The graphics are okay, but even then, I preferred it when you had physical dials. And then actually, these heater controls that we can see below the touchscreen, there's a little blue and a red marker for when you want to make it colder or hotter. And for some bizarre reason, they don't light up at night. They don't illuminate. So you can't see what you're doing at night. I have no idea how that got signed off, but it did. I'm not the first person to moan about that. But overall, it's a decent cabin, but it did used to be better. And I think the whole point of a new model, surely, is that you improve things. So, yeah, hopefully the MG can do a bit better. Now, since the Golf's cabin design is a little bit underwhelming, this could be a great chance for the MG4 XPower to get a point over it. And actually, there are some really nice bits in here. I like, for example, the driving position. It's pretty good and comfortable. Seats aren't too bad. They could do with a little bit more support though. And the infotainment system is really nice to use. Graphics nice and crisp, screens are really responsive, and it's nicely laid out as well. So top marks to MG for that infotainment system. And actually, the whole cabin is probably the best cabin that I've seen from an MG that, well, for as long as I can remember, because they used to be pretty terrible. But saying that, this is not very different at all to a regular MG4 cabin. In fact, the only thing I can see that's different is the red stitching on the seats and the armrests. Could be wrong, there could be other things, but I can't see them. So it doesn't feel extra special, and it doesn't feel like you're getting any more in the cabin for your extra money. There are some things though which feel a bit cheap, and you can see where this car's value comes in. I mean, there's a lot of plastic around, more so even than the Golf. Everything is on that touchscreen, so again, you've got no real physical buttons for climate control or anything like that. And I've got a digital dash in front of me, which actually isn't too bad, but it does feel in some ways like a budget Tesla. Now, for some people, that's actually a bit of a compliment, but yeah, it would be nice to see a bit more design in here. But overall, considering how much it costs, I think this is a decent effort at a good, functional cabin.
So neither car has a perfect cabin, but then the MG4 XPower has more of an excuse than the Golf, because instead of being £50,000 plus, this costs just under £37,000. And if we were to do a chart of pounds per brake horsepower, I'm pretty confident that the MG would come out on top of just about everything. Incredibly, the MG4 XPower produces 429 brake horsepower and 443 pounds-foot of torque, meaning 0 to 62 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds. It's not just fast for a hot hatchback, it's fast in anyone's book. It does this by adding a motor on the front axle in addition to the one on the rear, thus giving it all-wheel drive. The rear axle also gets an E-diff, while brake-based torque vectoring works across all four wheels. In addition, the brakes have been upgraded, stiffer springs have been added front and rear, the steering has been tweaked, and there's wider tyres, even if Bridgestone Turanzas are a bit of an odd choice for a performance car.
Right, let's start by launching it, because that's the thing that you always do with very powerful electric cars. So foot on the brake, build up the power, and oh, wow, okay. Yeah, it's fast. It's definitely very, very quick in a straight line. Let's see what it's like when it's rolling. Ooh, way. Yep, no doubt about the straight line pace. I mean, yeah, from 0 to 70 miles an hour, that's every bit as quick, if not quicker, than an A45 or an RS3. Is definitely not lacking in that department at all. The throttle response, it's not quite as sharp as, for example, a Tesla or other sporty but also more expensive electric cars. It's a little bit fluffier, and also it hasn't got any kind of artificial soundtrack to make it feel more like a sports car. It just has that typical electric car whine and then lots of very noticeable wind noise. It also puts down the power pretty effectively as well. I mean, it's not quite as seamless as some electric cars. There's a bit more of a scrabble for grip at the front end, but it still goes. It still puts it down with about 90% efficiency, I'd say. Handling wise, it's not really what I expected, because the regular MG4, the rear wheel drive version, is really good fun. It's probably one of the most delicate and engaging handling electric cars that you can buy. And I thought that with this, it would be like that, but they're sort of increasing the performance and making it even sportier. But apart from the additional speed, it doesn't really feel like that, because in the regular MG4, you go into a corner and it feels quite sweet. And then when you stand on the power coming through the corner, the back will come out and it will do quite a nice power slide. Whereas in this, with the all-wheel drive, none of that at all really. It's very secure, it's very safe, rolls a bit, and it's probably very capable as well. I mean, we're going through corners at impressive speeds, but it's not what I'd call fun. It's not a step on from the regular MG4. It's actually a step back.
Part of this is no doubt down to the extra weight, as the XPower comes in at about 150 kilograms more than the regular MG4, but there's more to it than that. The whole setup on the car feels very safe and tied down. It's not agile or on its toes like a proper hot hatch should be. And while you could level the same criticism at the Golf R to some extent, its dynamics are still far ahead of the MG4.
I mean, this is it. Coming into a corner now, it's very stable under braking, but then when you get on the power midway through the corner, it feels like too much power has been sent to the front wheel. So instead of getting it to tuck its line in, which the rear-wheel drive MG4 would do, this is just understeering because it's overwhelming the front wheels.
So the MG4 XPower isn't a car that entertains you in the corners, but aside from that, it is still a decent EV. It doesn't have adaptive dampers like the Golf R, so you will feel it roll, but the trade-off is an impressive ride quality. Also, the 61.8 kilowatt-hour battery is good for a range of 239 miles, with fast charging from 10 to 80% in 35 minutes. In truth, it actually feels more like a different, more powerful trim level rather than the outright hot performance variant.
This is reminding me a lot of the BMW i4, because the M50 version on that, with all the power and the all-wheel drive, it's not as good to drive as the entry-level rear-wheel drive version. And it's exactly the same story in this. I genuinely think you'd have more fun in the base MG4. Because that's still quick in a straight line, but through the corners, it's just more enjoyable. Oh man, I do wonder whether MG has missed a trick here. They had all the ingredients to make the first proper electric hot hatch, arguably the first proper mainstream electric performance car. But yeah, not sure they have. In fact, they definitely haven't. And so we end this test in a car park. Seems like an odd place to do it, but bear in mind the car park used to be the spiritual home of the hot hatch. You'd be driving around doing handbrake turns in the middle of the night. You'd have McDonald's trays under the rear wheels. That is the homeland of a hot hatch. But now, well, it feels like hot hatches have kind of grown up a little bit, especially in the case of the MG4 XPower. They've taken what was a very promising platform with the rear-wheel drive base MG4. That was great fun to drive, really agile, really engaging, and they've kind of made it feel very safe, very sensible, apart from that rapid straight line speed. But as soon as you get to a corner, it doesn't feel like a hot hatch. It doesn't even feel like a performance car. And I don't know, I'm a little bit disappointed. I can see why they've done it. It makes sense. We know that electric cars with really impressive straight line speed and acceleration, they do sell. But it seemed like a really good opportunity to make the first proper electric hot hatch, and they've passed it up. The Golf R, meanwhile, well, it did used to be better. I stand by that. The 7, the 7.5, that's peak Golf R. But this is still very good. I know I moaned about the cabin, but it's a decent cabin. It just used to be better. The practicality is pretty much the same as the MG. Arguably, the MG's is a bit better. And the comfort and usability on both cars is also very similar. So there's not a huge amount to choose between them in every category, but fun. And when you've got a car with that much power, it needs to be fun. And I think that this thing, despite its flaws and despite the fact that it did used to be better, it's still good fun. And as an overall package, it's the better hot hatch. And that is why it wins this test.